and welcome to The Drum Show, powered by Disruptive Live. I'm Rebecca Stewart, Senior Reporter at The Drum, and I'll be taking you through some of the biggest talking points in media and marketing this week. So let's take a quick look at the stories that have been making the headlines. This week began with the news of the passing of Lord Tim Bell. The influential and controversial PR giant was best known for his role as comms advisor to Margaret Thatcher and for his work on the 1979 Labour Isn't Working billboards. As reported by The Drum's editor, Stephen Leftak, Bell, pictured here with PRCA Director General Francis Ingham, was the first MD of Saatchi & Saatchi. He was also one of the founders of Bell Pottinger, which was placed into administration in 2017 following uproar over its role in stirring racial tensions in South Africa. Bell was described by Sir Martin Sorrell as the real third brother of the Saatchis and the best client man of his generation. Now, has someone at Doritos lost their mind? The snack brand has become the latest advertiser to remove its name from its logo in the belief that consumers will recognise it regardless. Following similar moves by MasterCard and Starbucks, Doritos has replaced its watermark with a line that says, "Logo goes here." The Drum's Creative Works editor, Kyle O'Brien, explained how it was part of the brand's Another Level campaign targeting Gen Z. You can view Doritos' first nameless ad on the Creative Works section of The Drum. And some breaking news from this morning, the UK government will launch its 100 million no-deal Brexit ad campaign next week. As our reporter John Glenday notes, the campaign will kick off with billboards and a revamped government website carrying the slogan, "Get Ready." Hailed as the biggest government advertising drive since World War II, its launch will coincide with MPs returning to Parliament to resume Brexit hostilities. You can read more about that story and all the latest marketing news from around the world on thedrum.com. But now, let's talk to our guests about the stories that caught their eye this week. Joining us today, we have TSB Chief Marketing Officer Pete Markey, Oliver Group UK Chief Executive Sharon Whale, and ISBA Director General Phil Smith. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. What stories caught your eye this week? Sharon, would you like to start?
Yes. The story that caught my eye really has been Greta Thunberg arriving in New York for the UN Global Climate Change Summits. A lot has been written about that, from her being a hero all the way through to vilifying her stance. And when you think about how many journalists have flown over to see her arrive, that what she's done has been completely offset by what everybody else has done. But I kind of think that misses the point somewhat. Clients of ours like Alan Jope have been tweeting his support for not just Greta but for the global goals. And I think it makes you think much harder about what marketing's role and agencies' role is in climate change, but also sustainable living. And I think there were kind of 3 or 4 points in there. I think, firstly, are we putting our own house in order? What are agencies and marketing businesses doing to make sure that their carbon footprint is as neutral as possible? And we're doing a lot of that at Oliver, and we need to make sure we globalise that in terms of, we've even put a composting wormery in our basement. We only buy glass milk bottles, and we only use sustainable suppliers, and all the things that we should be doing, but we need to do more. And I think a lot of agencies need to do more. I think secondly, we're in a unique position where we have agencies inside of some 200 clients around the world. What can our people on site do to influence and set good practice and set an example of how we should be behaving? And I think most importantly, although we should be fully behind doing brilliant marketing for our clients, particularly on their sustainable objectives, but it used to be that agencies had a pro bono client or then we moved on to kind of, incubating a tech company. But actually, I think all marketing agencies should be supporting at least one sustainable small business or new business and helping them drive their business forward. Because if we're going to spend money or take low margins on sort of pro bono work, then we should be doing it for the future of everyone on the planet, not just for certain segments.
So lessons to be learned
loads
for
of
brands
lessons.
from Greta. And it's been so amazing following her journey, actually, on Twitter especially.
I think it just raises the profile yet further, and there's, the marketing industry has been very slow to react. Or to act.
Phil, what story caught your eye this week?
Well, this is an industry story, not a headline, but I think significant nonetheless. And it was an interview in the FT with Simon McDougall of the Information Commissioner's Office. And it's part of a steady drumbeat of communication that we've now been seeing from the ICO about their concerns about targeted advertising. There was an ICO update in June that laid out particular concerns about real-time bidding and the spread of personal information. And this is, again, back to that theme. It's talking about the dialogue that's going on, but the sense that the ICO is still not getting the answers it seeks. It's saying the answers it's getting are vague and that they're very short. And its particular concerns are around sensitive category data that's being used in targeting and the proliferation of personal data in the advertising ecosystem are ones that have not been assuaged to date. The industry has put on a 6-month timetable for this starting in June. Yeah. So I think we can expect more as we run up to Christmas. There will be more engagement, and we're engaged with the DMA. We'll be issuing advice for advertisers. But I think there's a lot that's going to need to be shown to be done by the supply side of the industry if we come out of this one without major change being required by regulation. Yeah, definitely a story that isn't going anywhere anytime soon, I don't think. And Pete, what was your pick of the week?
Well, my pick of the week is actually from the drum itself, and a topic close to my own heart, which is about insourcing. And it's a survey that was done of financial services marketers looking at the year ahead. And 50%, or just under 50% of those surveyed, indicated that they thought it was more likely that work currently undertaken externally would be insourced within the business. And I thought it was really interesting, seeing that trend, the motivation behind it, and the opportunity for those businesses to take a bit more control of the creative process themselves in-house or working with third parties to achieve that. The article also covered a bit about some of the concern areas that the financial services marketers have around digital, around data, some of the things actually Phil was just talking about. So really interesting article, well worth reading, but at its heart, it's some really interesting insights around the move to insourcing. Yep,
and that segues nicely into our topic of discussion for today, which is all about in-housing. I'm just curious to know what's driving the in-housing trend, Sharon, from your perspective.
Apart from us?
Yeah, apart from Oliver.
I think there is no one driver, and the drivers have evolved. There was a very recent DMA report which backs up a number of findings around effective and efficient. So, marketeers have ever more on their plate in terms of their remit. They have ever more customers in ever more touch points that they need to target in a relevant and personal, not intrusive way. And actually just keeping the wheels on the bus is, getting the business as usual work out the door is something that CMOs are engaging with on a daily basis. There's never enough time, money or resource. So taking part of your agency services in-house allows you to be much more effective and efficient with your time, get more done and do it for the budgets that you have. And actually allows you to free up money to do more in terms of re-engineering and reimagining your marketing landscape. So, the original drivers were very much in that space. Those drivers are changing now. There's technology and data have become much bigger parts of that equation. So being able to connect your data ecosystem, be able to use that data to target and optimize in real time, be able to boost your paid social in real time. All of those things mean that you need to be there, you need to make those decisions on the ground. So the drivers are changing now to be more data-driven, more strategic. So there is no one reason, but there's a lot around proximity, speed, efficiency and effectiveness.
Yeah. And Phil, just playing devil's advocate here, ISBA obviously represents some of the biggest advertisers in the UK. What trend are you seeing among them when it comes to in-housing, and has it been a bit overblown? It seems a bit cyclical.
Well, there are many different flavours of in-housing or in-sourcing, and most of our members are doing something on that spectrum. I mean, there's been a lot of recent press about in-housing of media, and that's probably the one where people are still trying to find their way. There are very few who've gone the full hog in that respect, but many of our members are experimenting with what's the right thing. Where do they take more control over their data? Do they own the technology and then outsource the operation? but most have been doing some form of in-housing of creative work and production work, particularly in what I call their more downstream activities for some time. So I think it's not going to go away. It is structural. They talk about flexibility, they talk about cost, they talk about speed. And of course, in the digital environment, there is a need for all of those things. And whilst agencies are still retained for the strategic work and for the big ideas, they are fewer and farther between.
I think it's interesting that you say that there are different flavours, and it's a really important point to make, because in-housing can mean you're doing it yourself as a brand. It can mean that you're using your traditional agencies to place some people in your world. Or it can mean you're using, an Oliver model, which is, building a specific agency and running it for that client with all the attendant additional agency services. But you actually have your agency in house, and they all have slightly, different connotations.
It's about tailoring it to the right approach the organisation needs, isn't it?
Yes.
There isn't. It's not quite as easy as a one size fits all, and I think therefore it's working with partners who can help shape it around. We work with Oliver to this as well. It's a chance to shape it around exactly what you need. The bit that got me, I've done a fair amount of insourcing. I've run studios with our own people in different companies. I've worked with Oliver previously, as well as an agency called Linny at Post Office. And I think for me, actually, the wrong starting point is cost, because you end up driving it in a certain direction. All our conversations with Oliver were far more about gaining competitive advantage. And the sort of industries I've worked in, particularly financial services, actually the opportunity to get ahead, to move at greater pace is paramount. So if you can get closer to your data, your creative and your media planning and buying, bring that closer together, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
And the work, we've done with Oliver, we started off with social and content, so video production. We've moved now into what I'd call one-to-one, so email, direct mail, still a good channel, and display and wider is done within the Oliver studio that is growing, which is really exciting. It's a hybrid model. It's a mix of our people, a mix of Oliver people, which is working very well. But it means we can move at pace. If we see an opportunity through our performance data or what's happening, what's going on, we can act on that much faster. We can produce more work at a greater pace and at the right cost. And that's a way to keep ahead, which is really exciting. And that's the sort of founding principles that we move forwards with.
Yeah, and we're hearing those themes of control and speed a lot, and increasingly. I think it'd be fair to say if you go back 10 years, 15 years, a lot of the original driver would have been cost.
Yes.
And it would have been around production of large quantities of repetitive work.
And a kind of quick question for you all, where does this in-housing trend leave traditional agencies?
I think there's still a space. Phil's right. I'm wrestling a bit with, media is interesting. How much of that do you want to control yourself? And I know people that have moved things like paid search buying in-house, move things like aggregate or affiliate spend in-house. And I think those are interesting models. I'm not in a place where I feel it's right for us as a brand to go on that journey at the moment. Where it will end up, I think, is a space where, in my view, bigger strategic thought, as in the bigger ideas, I think there's still a place for what you might label the traditional agencies to play a role. Because I think those things, you need great specialist skill to do that. And I think equally with some of the more strategic aspects of media buying, I think is really helpful to have other people around you. One of the things I value the most from my agencies is the sort of challenge you get, the review and challenge. It's great to have super smart people who are really challenging your thinking on a regular basis. Equally, I get a lot of that with the Oliver team. So I think there's a space where, as clients, we'll get closer to data, digital to creative, and that will be more in our control, and that'll be a fusion of partnership. But I think there's still a space for more traditional players, if I probably don't want to be labelled that, but established providers to play a really important role with the bigger ideas, the bigger strategic thinking, and kind of the breakthrough ideas that are really going to get you a cut through, particularly in really highly competitive categories, definitely.
Yeah, we've seen very few examples of major advertisers walking away from their strategic creative partner, but they will operate alongside.
Yeah.
The only example I can think of as a company that does all of this brilliantly is Specsavers. But that's the outlier. Specsavers on the island of Jersey run the whole thing, and they even brought media planning closer, but the creative end-to-end is done in-house. There are very few that I can see who have either done it or have the confidence to get the quality of that working end-to-end.
I think there is always going to be a role for more than one advisor to a client. As a client, you'd never particularly want to only take your advice from one place. So whether in housing or the Oliver model specifically, it is moving in the direction of high-end creativity and high-end technology, consultancy. There are opportunities for us there and clients that want us to step into that space, and because we're now part of You and Mr. Jones, we have the opportunity to do more of that. But that doesn't mean that traditional agencies or consultancies don't have their space as well, because you're never going to put everything in one place. So I think traditional agencies have to evolve still.
Yeah, agree.
Building brands from broadcast down is still sadly the default option for many, but that's where they need to change. They need to understand the media landscape and how people consume content.
Yeah,
I think it's also how agencies will work with each other, because I think your point about agencies needing to evolve, part of that evolution is also accepting a different ecosystem and working with it. So if you are developing the big idea or the big strategic thought, how you work then with other partners. I mean, you do this very well with Unilever particularly, and how you work with us, but you've got to be prepared to work more closely with other partners, even if they're agencies you don't directly own or control.
Yes.
Because as a client, that partnership is more important than ever to get your brand to be completely seamless and consistent throughout.
Indeed.
Well, it's a fascinating debate, and sure one that's not going anywhere soon. Thank you so much for joining us to discuss it, guys.
Thank you.
Now, if there's one thing we all hate in this business, it's jargon. Each week, we'll be asking one industry luminary to share their bullshit buzzword that they'd love to banish. This week, we have Engine Group's Creative Chief Executive, Etty Davies, who has actually broken the rules a bit and chosen a multi-hyphenate.
Hi, I'm Etty Davies. I'm the CEO of Engine Creative, and my bullshit buzzword is data-driven innovation.
Okay, now it's time for Work of the Week. Every day, the Drum website shares the world's best new advertising and design work on our dedicated platform, Creative Works. You can even post your own work there for the world to enjoy. Our readers vote on the projects they like to crown our Work of the Week. So let's take a look at who's taken the trophy this week.
You don't really need anything other than just the desire.
What we're trying to do is bigger than me.
I want this to happen, so I'm gonna make it happen.
Faça você mesmo do punk me ensinou a ser quem eu sou.
总是那个你老是说我们不行，可能，但是我们不这么想。
If you want something done, get out there and do it.
There's no right way to paint. There's no right way to sing a song. There's no right way to do anything. If you're like an artist in any capacity, nothing should stop you. DIY is the ultimate you to anyone who says that you can't, because you can.
Now, there's plenty more where that came from, and if you want to see more work, vote for your favourite and submit your own project, visit the Drum's Creative Works page on thedrum.com. And finally, here's what we've got coming up in the world of media and marketing. The nominations for the 2019 Daddy Awards, which celebrate the best work in digital advertising, have been revealed. Heineken, Nike, Boots and HBO are just some of the companies who have made the shortlist this year. The awards will take place at the Park Plaza, Westminster in London on the 10th of October. More details about the event itself, along with the shortlist, can be found on the Daddy's website. Next up, the Drum and Lab are hosting a premiere next week for our mini documentary which explores the pros and cons of a 4-day working week. Sounds good to me. If you're in town next Wednesday, come along to Summit London in Soho, where our Chief Executive, Diane Young, will be hosting the screening from 6 o'clock. You can register to attend for free or by going on the link on screen. And it's almost time for the great and good of AdTech to descend on Cologne for the annual Demexco conference starting on 11th of September. The Drum is sending its debonair senior reporter John McCarthy to cover all the action, and he'll be interviewing some of the biggest names in the industry. Also out in force will be our business development team who can be contacted for meetings over a Steiner 3 by email. Just contact them at demexco@thedrum.com. And finally, Keep your eyes on thedrum.com next week, where we'll be revealing who our readers have chosen as the 25 most influential women from 25 years of digital marketing. That's all we've got time for this week. Do join us next Friday for more media and marketing insights on The Drum Show. Take care.